with me Mr. Andreas Eieland, Senior Product Marketing Manager for Flash Microcontrollers from Atmel. Welcome to my program.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, I have three important questions for you now, to all the people knows about what is Atmel and which segment Atmel play today.
So Atmel, we are a microcontroller company. They make flash microcontrollers and microprocessors and technology that is close to microcontrollers, like wireless connectivity, Wi-Fi, Zigbee, Bluetooth. We also make capacitive touch sensing and a lot of crypto authentication and other secure products. We have about $1.4 billion revenue and we're close to 5,000 employees, so a big company.
How long Atmel is in Brazil today?
So we've had a physical presence with an office and sales guys in Brazil for 7 years. But Atmel is almost 30 years old. So we have been selling 8051s, AVR microcontrollers, and a lot of memories to Brazil for much longer.
In your view, an event like this, like ESC Brazil, is really important to connect all the producers, connect the technicians, the engineers, and for Atmel, how important is this event?
Well, as you see, we've spent quite a lot of money on the booth and flying down all these people in blue shirts. And we think it's important not only to show people that we are a player in the Brazilian market, it's also important because business is a lot about relationship. Technology is evolving fast. And when we have our experts here, like I'm here for flash microcontrollers, we have a wireless expert for Wi-Fi and RF, we have our local sales guys, we have a touch expert. Customers can come in here, we can discuss their projects, we go through this is what you can do, this is how we can help you, and if they have questions about what are we going to do the next 3 months, the next 6 months, the next year, we can work on that together as well to make sure that what we are doing aligns with what they need for their future projects. So and Brazil is an emerging market. It's growing. It's one of the fastest growing markets. So we want to be here. We want to be a part of this growth.
That's great. What's the vision of the Maker movement?
So the Maker movement is something very special. The Maker movement is not Atmel. It's not Raspberry Pi. The Maker movement is a movement of people who want to go back to making stuff instead of just going to the store and buying it, and fixing stuff instead of throwing things away and buying new stuff. The Maker movement is everything from welding and knitting and sewing to electronics. And on the electronics side is, of course, the side I am most enthusiastic about and the side Atmel is most enthusiastic about. And we are in a very good position because we're working closely together with a company called Arduino. And Arduino makes the Lego blocks for electronics that's popular for the Maker movement. So today, with our 8-bit AVR products, we are having a lot of interest in the Maker movement. They are selling lots of products. And the most funny thing, I think, is when I go to Maker fairs around the world, there are 10, 11-year-old kids coming to me, showing me their electronics projects. So I see, like, electronics is the new hobby. It's the new knitting or carpentry for kids to play around with. And from a commercial point of view, when you look at the Maker movement, there's a million ideas. Most of them are crazy.
Most of those ideas are used by the industry already, no?
Yeah, many of them are used by the industry. For instance, 3D printers came from the Maker movement. Almost all 3D printers use Atmel AVR. And moving forwards, you're also working with Arduino to take our Atmel Smart technology, the SAMD21, which is a Cortex M0 Plus based ARM micro, and putting it in an Arduino, so you also enable them to look at lower-end ARMs as well as AVR. But as I said, from the commercial point of view, with all these ideas, some of them are bound to be successful. There's going to be successful startups from the Maker community. Examples include Pebble, MakerBot, Adafruit, and several others. So there's a lot of things happening, and we are very happy to be a part of it, and we're happy to contribute, both for me as an engineer that likes to see the next generation like electronics.
It's fantastic, and we heard you talking about the eyes, the sunshine, the voice, taking the empowerment that we really need. This one from the industry, from the inventors, for the industry. That is very great. That is very great.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing on the electronic side of the maker movement is things have become so easy to use and so relatively low cost now that if you have a great idea, even if you don't have experience with electronics, you can build it and you can check it and you can have a proof of concept to see, does my idea work in the real world?
So I think it is the profession of the future.
Yeah, electronics is always going to be the future.
Everything is in the future. Okay, thank you very much for talking with us now, and all the best for Atmel, for you here in Brazil in this market segmentation and all those projects.
Okay, thank you very much, and thanks for having me on your show.
Okay, welcome. I have here Mr. Max, the editor of the All Things Fun and Interesting, and I loved this business card. Max, thank you very much to be here in my program.
Thank you so much for having me.
My question for you is, what's your view about the ESC here in Brazil and all these actions of the makers?
This is my first time to ESC in Brazil, and I'm just having a tremendously fun time. It's a very young crowd. In America, the ESC, very often there are older people. I'm getting old myself. But seeing all these young engineers, they're so interested to learn. And they're so good at what they do. Going around the different booths, there's one around the corner where they've built a robot that's doing the Rubik's Cube. And I'm just blown away. I just love everything here. The maker stuff, I personally am very interested in that. When I was younger, I used to design mainframe computers. Now, because I'm an editor for E-Times, I spend a lot of time writing about technology. And it's a very good job because all the technology companies call me up to say, Max, we've invented something incredible. You can't talk about it. But they tell me what they're doing, and wow, so that's wonderful. But I look to the old days when I used to really make things. So I love the maker community because I make things using the Arduino very often, which, as you know, has the Atmel processor. Once I got started with the Arduino, I can't tell you the things I've been doing. An LED cube, and first of all I built a 4x4x4 cube. Now I'm working on an 8x8x8, which is 512 LEDs. I just started a really nice project to take the old analog meters. You remember the old meters that go like that? A big one, it's going to be a clock. So a big one for the hours, smaller ones for the minutes and seconds, and then a little one going tick, 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 tick. But I want to make it, it's a special form of clock that is annoying to people. So instead of going tick, tock, tick, tock, it goes tick, tock, tick, tock, tick, tock, tick. So you're not quite sure what it's doing. Well, then you start thinking, yeah. And when it gets to the hour, when it gets to 60 minutes, the hour hand will start and go to the next one. You can do all sound effects and stuff. So, but this is just a small project of my own. When you go to the maker stuff, the ideas that people have are tremendous. And I am so enthused by this because when I was younger, when I was 16, most of my friends used to buy a hobby electronics magazine with simple circuits, and we would make things. We soldered, we talked about our projects, and in those days you had kits of parts like Heath kits, and you could build a colour television project cheaper than you could buy one. So there was an incentive to make things. And then electronics changed, and we got this consumer type thing where when something breaks, your television breaks, throw it away, buy a new one. And it's much cheaper to buy one than it is to make one. And all the old hobby magazines started to go down. People stopped making stuff. And I thought that 10 years ago, if you'd asked me 10 years ago, I would have said hobby electronics is dying. And then suddenly, about 10 years ago, the Arduino came along, the Maker Fairs came along, and all sorts of things like 3D printers. And suddenly, wherever you turn, the maker movement is huge. They're opening, there's the maker movement, there's equivalent movements like the tech shop in California, where you have a big facility that has all the equipment that you could ever hope to have. Stuff that you could never afford yourself, and you pay some fee like $50 a month. But you can go down any time and you have access to mills, drills, lathes, and to other people who are working on projects. There's one just opened in my town, Huntsville, Alabama. There's one a friend goes to in Birmingham. And the maker movement is exploding. And I just love seeing other people's projects as well. Every time I see someone's project, I go, I want one of those.
Hello, I have with me Mr. Jose Antonio Scodiero, Business Development from ARM. Jose Antonio, nice to meet you, first of all. Thank you very much to be here with me in our program. And my first question, and I think is really relevant, is what's the importance for ARM to be involved in this community of makers here in Brazil?
Hi, nice to meet you, Jose Antonio. I think ARM is kind of an ingredient of this industry all over the world. So this Brazil event of Embedded System Conference is really important for ARM because we see a very well-known community of either manufacturers, component manufacturers, or equipment manufacturers that utilizes ARM technology all over the products and the prototypes that they are showing here. So we see ARM participates in this event since from the beginning here in Brazil. We see the event growing and growing every year, getting stronger, and the community in Brazil also growing. So it's very important for Brazil that we have a development of local technologies, local content inside the products that Brazil consumes. Manufacturing is not anymore a big challenge for the country. And the country is looking for local development. And ARM as an ingredient for microprocessors, microcontrollers, it is the dominant architecture for the embedded world. So it's important that this community grows for ARM development in Brazil too.
I have with me Mr. John Howe, Mr. John Mad Dog Howe, as you explained in your speech, Executive Director from Linux International. Welcome to my program, The Way of Success.
Well, thank you very much.
I would like to know and to understand well, how do you see Linux inside in the framework of all those makers?
Okay, if you're going to have a piece of hardware that's a computer, you obviously need software to make it work. And in order to do that, you could write all of the software yourself from the very beginning, which would be very hard. However, there's a lot of people out there who have developed software that can run on processors like the Arduino or the ARM chip and have a complete operating system with databases and web servers and everything you really need to be able to take your idea and implement it with an inexpensive processor such as the Raspberry Pi, or one that comes from China right now called the Banana Pi, or even a more sophisticated processor. But you don't have to sign any agreements. You don't have to say, well, I'm only going to put it on this type of processor or that type of processor. You can just go ahead and do it. And that, I think, is the greatest thing, is the freedom to be able to follow your idea and to create it without having to ask anybody's permission. So that's what Linux does.
What must be noticed nowadays is that what could be achieved in the maker field is not what you could make, but why not make it? People always ask me about why you did that lame project, or why you did that great project. There is no lame, there is no great. There is just what you make, and so make it.
And how do you see Brazil in this part of games? So it's very close to be a player of success?
I think I'm not an expert here. This is my second day in Brazil. So the only thing I'm expert at is the Brazilian steak barbecue house.
That's a success.
Oh, it was unbelievable. Talking to people here, I hear that the government is now starting to invest a lot in training and in embedded especially. Embedded, well, there's a problem here. This is the Embedded Systems Conference. If you were to ask everybody what is an embedded system, say there were 10,000 people here, they'd give you 10,000 answers. So if all the people who design embedded systems or at the embedded conference can't tell you what an embedded system is, yeah, there's something complicated going on there. But I don't think we can imagine what's coming our way. If you think of the iPad, I cannot imagine life without my iPad now. Do you have an iPad?
I have an iPad, and I made a mistake. I gave my iPad for 3 days to my wife, and after 6 months, it's still with her.
I know so many people who say exactly the same thing. I got one for my mother, and she's now an iPad diva, and she's 84 years old. I mean, computers that anyone can use. It seems to me that iPads have been here forever. The first iPad, 4 years ago, 2010.
I have a history of my brother. That is, he gave an iPad as a gift to his son and bought another one for him. And I asked him, why two? It's because I need to learn about iPad to teach my son.
Yes. I also, on YouTube, there's a video of a little baby, 2 years old, who is playing with a magazine on an iPad, moving the finger, turning the pages. And then a bit later, the same baby on the floor with a print magazine, and she's moving it with a finger, and she goes, it's broken. It doesn't work.
That's great. That's great. This is Max, my friend. This is Max. Max, thank you very much to be here.
My very great pleasure. Thank you for having me. The problem with me is not to get me to start talking, it's getting me to stop talking.
But it was my pleasure to listen to something about your things. My friends, we come back later. During your speech today morning, you talk about the smart city. Can you talk a little bit more about that for me, please?
Yeah, the Internet of Things and the so-called Internet of Things and the smart cities, the smart grid, brings a lot of new developments and new opportunities for the developed world and technology, and also for the emerging markets like Brazil, right? So I use the example of smart lighting. So with the LED technology, with the controllers in each lamp, you can imagine what you can do in this area. So ARM technology is in every device that you have for this. For example, to control a light, you have one post with a device. That, let's say, a big portion of these devices are equipped with ARM semiconductor technology. ARM recently acquired a company called Sensinode that we call now ARM Sensinode, that is more in the software side, meaning that there's a potential to put together software and hardware, microelectronics with software, to then enable the communication between things. So it's so-called Internet of Things. So every lamp will talk with the other lamp that will talk to a hub, that will talk to a server, that will talk to the cloud. So it's a connection to control. You can have a light in front of your house. You press a button, you tell that controller that you have a security problem in your house. This will communicate, and the light in the whole neighborhood could start blinking, telling to the police where the problem is. So this is just one example. It's an infinite number of possibilities that you can have with this. And ARM is in the core of this technology, not only in semiconductor, but also with software, like I said now.
Well, if you were trying to write everything yourself, it would take a very long time. So one of the things that free software is an accelerator to take your idea and bring it to market faster. It's the same thing with the Raspberry Pi. You could design that CPU board yourself out of the various components, or you could simply buy a Raspberry Pi and put it into your solution, put it into your product as a solution. Then over time, as you say, I'm selling my product or making money, you can re-engineer that Raspberry Pi to make it cheaper, maybe using a computer on a module. But by that time, you have the money to do it. So free software can be an accelerator to bring your idea to market, because you have all this software that you can pull from, all the software you can use to make the prototype and even the production model of your idea.
In your point of view, which is the market segmentation that is very close to be a reality, which is these all new technologies that we are talking about?
I see the smart cities, smart grids, more concrete solutions already applied, but you see a lot of gadgets inside the home starting to communicate and let's say talk to each other, but mainly informing you what is happening in your house that ultimately will connect to the smart grid, to the smart city.
Okay, thank you very much, and I hope and I desire you all the success for your company here in Brazil.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the interview.
And how do you see Brazil in this moment, in this process?
Well, Brazil's in very good shape, actually, because you have the government's been using free software for a long time. A lot of your universities are teaching students about free software, and not only about writing the software itself, but how do you develop a product? How do you develop something and bring it to market? So I think that Brazil has really a very good spot. Ironically, in Brazil, I think it's more the hardware that's holding you back. And that's because you import so much hardware from Taiwan at a very high price for duty. If you produce that hardware in Brazil, then you could import the components if you had to. Some you could purchase locally. And the import duty on the components is much lower, around 6%. So you would actually be able to develop less expensive products by manufacturing and doing the design in Brazil. But unfortunately, too many people just say, oh, it's easier just to go to Taiwan, they'll do it, and the customer will pay the extra money because they have to.
Okay, thank you very much for your time with me now, but I cannot finish this without the question you explained in the speech, why Moodog?
Well, I'm 64 years old, so a lot of people see me with this long white beard, and they think of me as Santa Claus, Papa Noel, bringing around Christmas presents. Yeah.
I'm trying to use like that, so.
But when I was 27, my beard was neither white nor long, and I had much more of a temper than I have now. But I've learned to control it, so I keep the name Mad Dog so that to remind me not to lose my temper.
Okay, thank you very much. And have a nice time here in my country for the rest of the week. Thank you.
Thank you.